The unspoken divide. Jonas Evans walked through the bustling streets of Richmond, his fingers gripping the straps of his worn-out backpack. The cool autumn breeze played with the edges of his jacket as he kept his head down, lost in thought. Richmond wasn't exactly welcoming to someone like Jonas, a young black teen navigating a predominantly white neighborhood. Despite the racial tension simmering beneath the surface, Jonas had found a way to fit in by keeping to himself and excelling in what he loved most: music. Music was his sanctuary. No matter how the world treated him, the sound of jazz, the improvisation, and rhythm made him feel alive, free from judgment. He had joined the school's music class a few weeks ago, and that's where he met Ethan Davis, a fellow student who seemed genuinely excited to know him. Ethan was easygoing, always smiling, and most importantly, a fan of jazz too. Despite their different backgrounds, their love for music became the bridge that connected them. But today was different. Jonas found himself standing in front of the Davis mansion, a sprawling home that looked like something straight out of a magazine. The Davis family was wealthy. Everyone in town knew that. As he stood there, his heart began to race, and the weight of his insecurities pressed down on him. Ethan had invited him over to work on their music project, but being here, in this world of luxury, made Jonas feel out of place. He wasn't used to homes like this. His neighborhood was modest, his house small, and his family just getting by. Jonas wiped his sweaty palms on his jeans and took a deep breath before ringing the doorbell. The chime echoed through the vast house, and a moment later, the door swung open. Standing before him was Mrs. Linda Davis, Ethan's mother. Her icy blue eyes scanned Jonas from head to toe, her expression unreadable. "You must be Jonas," she said, her voice clipped. There was no warmth, no welcome in her tone. "Yes, Mom," Jonas replied nervously, forcing a smile. "Thank you for having me over." Mrs. Davis stepped aside, motioning for him to enter. "Ethan is upstairs," she said curtly. "First door on the right." Jonas nodded and made his way inside, the grand foyer and marble floors making him even more self-conscious. He could feel Mrs. Davis's eyes on him as he climbed the staircase, her gaze lingering a little too long. The unspoken divide between them felt palpable, as if his presence in this house disrupted an unspoken order. He shook off the uneasy feeling, reminding himself that he was here for music, nothing else. When he entered Ethan's room, he was met with a wide smile and the familiar sight of instruments scattered across the floor. "Hey, man," Ethan greeted him, excitement in his voice. "Ready to jam?" Jonas smiled, relieved to be in a space that felt comfortable, even if only temporarily. "Definitely," he replied, setting down his backpack and pulling out his music sheets. For the next few hours, the two boys lost themselves in the joy of creating music. The walls of the mansion faded away, and all that existed was the rhythm, the melody, and their shared passion for jazz. But the harmony of the afternoon would soon be shattered. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the day began to wind down, Mrs. Davis's voice echoed from downstairs. "Ethan, Jonas, come down for dinner." The boys made their way to the elegant dining room, where a lavish spread awaited them. Jonas couldn't help but feel out of place as he sat at the long oak table, the fine china and crystal glasses contrasting sharply with the simple meals he was used to at home. Mrs. Davis sat at the head of the table, her eyes barely acknowledging Jonas. Ethan's father, Mr. Davis, was away on business, so it was just the three of them. As they ate, Mrs. Davis's icy demeanor didn't go unnoticed. She directed most of the conversation toward Ethan, only occasionally throwing a question Jonas's way, questions that felt more like polite formalities than genuine interest. Jonas tried to brush it off, focusing on the fact that he was here to work on music with Ethan, not to make friends with his mother. After dinner, the boys returned to Ethan's room to finish their project, but the atmosphere felt different now. The tension was subtle but present, lingering in the air like a storm waiting to break. Then it happened. Mrs. Davis burst into the room, her face flushed with anger. Her eyes locked onto Jonas. "Where is it?" she demanded, her voice sharp and accusatory. Ethan looked up, confused. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "My gold bracelet," she snapped. "It was on the kitchen counter, and now it's gone." Jonas felt his heart drop into his stomach. I didn't take anything," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Davis's eyes narrowed as she took a step toward him, her suspicion turning into full-blown accusation. "It disappeared right after you arrived." "How convenient." Jonas's mind raced, disbelief and humiliation washing over him in waves. He had never been accused of something like this before, and the weight of her words felt crushing. "I swear, Mrs. Davis, I didn't take your bracelet," Jonas said, his voice shaking. Ethan jumped to his feet, his face a mix of shock and disbelief. "Mom, Jonas wouldn't steal anything. You can't just accuse him like that." Mrs. Davis wasn't listening. Her anger had taken over, and in her mind, the conclusion had already been drawn. "Empty your pockets," she demanded. "And your backpack. Right now." Jonas stood frozen, his cheeks burning with shame. He couldn't believe what was happening. Ethan's mother, someone he barely knew, was accusing him of theft without a shred of evidence. The room seemed to close in on him, the walls pressing in as Mrs. Davis's words rang in his ears. "I didn't take it," Jonas repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. But Mrs. Davis wasn't backing down. "Empty them," she barked again. Jonas's hands trembled as he slowly opened his backpack, turning it upside down to show its contents. Nothing but school books and sheet music spilled onto the floor. He patted his pockets, showing they were empty too. But the damage had already been done. The accusation hung in the air, a stain that couldn't be erased. "I think I should go," Jonas muttered, his voice thick with emotion. He grabbed his backpack, stuffing his things inside hurriedly. Ethan's face was pale with disbelief as he watched his best friend, unable to believe what was unfolding before him. "Jonas, wait." The weight of misjudgment. Jonas Evans felt the air grow heavy with disbelief as he turned away from Ethan's room. The bitter taste of humiliation filled his mouth, and each step he took felt like he was trudging through mud, sinking deeper into the quicksand of shame. He had never anticipated that an innocent visit could devolve into such an agonizing ordeal. "Jonas, please." Ethan's voice cut through the tension, but Jonas couldn't bring himself to look back. The ache in his chest was overwhelming, fueled by a mix of hurt and indignation. He opened the front door, the sudden gust of cool air hitting him like a slap. As he stepped onto the manicured lawn, the world outside seemed almost surreal, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in his heart. He heard Ethan calling after him again, desperation lacing his voice. "Don't go. My mom. She didn't mean it." But Jonas didn't stop. Each step away from the Davis house felt like an escape from judgment, from a mother who had quickly dismissed him as a thief based solely on his skin color. The streets of Ridgemont were dimly lit, the shadows lengthening as the sun sank below the horizon. Jonas walked home in a haze, his thoughts swirling around the encounter like a tempest. It wasn't just Mrs. Davis's accusation that haunted him. It was the knowledge that prejudice still thrived in this world, lurking behind closed doors and within the hearts of those who should know better. As he made his way through the familiar streets, the weight of the situation pressed down harder on him. Jonas had always been aware of the racial disparities that existed, but this experience was a cruel reminder of how easily trust could be shattered. His mind raced with thoughts of his own mother and the values she instilled in him. The importance of integrity, the strength in kindness. He had never felt so vulnerable, so exposed. When he finally reached home, Jonas pushed the front door open, the familiar smell of his mother's cooking enveloping him. His mother, a single parent who worked tirelessly to make ends meet, was in the kitchen, her back turned to him as she stirred a pot on the stove. The soft sound of jazz music played in the background, an ironic comfort in light of his tumultuous evening. "Hey baby, how was your day?" she called, turning to face him. The warm smile on her face quickly faded as she noticed the storm brewing behind his eyes. "Jonas, what's wrong?" Jonas dropped his backpack on the floor and sank into a chair at the kitchen table, burying his face in his hands. He felt a wave of emotion crash over him, a mixture of anger, sadness, and frustration. "Mom, you won't believe what just happened." As he recounted the details of the evening, his mother listened intently, her expression shifting from concern to disbelief. "She accused you of stealing, just like that?" "Yeah," Jonas replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I didn't do anything wrong. I just went over to work on our project. Ethan is my friend, and I thought it would be cool to hang out." His mother shook her head, her brow furrowing in disappointment. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that, Jonas. It's not right. People still think like that, and it's heartbreaking." Jonas could feel the tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. "I thought things were getting better, that people were changing. But moments like this make me wonder if anything will ever change." His mother reached out, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You're not defined by what other people think, sweetheart. You know who you are, and you have to hold on to that. Don't let someone else's ignorance steal your joy or your passion for music." Jonas took a deep breath, appreciating her words but still feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. "I know, but it hurts. It hurts to be judged like that." "Let it fuel your fire, Jonas," she urged. "Channel that pain into your music. Show the world who you are through your art. You have a gift, and nothing can take that away from you." Her words struck a chord deep within him. Music had always been his outlet, a way to express emotions he couldn't articulate. He had played the trumpet since he was 8 years old, pouring his heart into every note, every melody. Perhaps, in the face of such prejudice, he could find a way to turn his hurt into something beautiful. "Thanks, Mom," he said finally, wiping his eyes. "I just need some time to process everything." As Jonas retreated to his room, he felt a flicker of determination ignite within him. He pulled out his trumpet, the instrument that had been a part of his life for as long as he could remember. The smooth brass felt comforting in his hands, a reminder of the connection he had to music and to himself. He started to play, pouring his heart into the notes. The soulful sounds filled his room, a healing balm for his troubled spirit. The music danced through the air, a conversation between him and the universe, expressing the anguish of misunderstanding, the joy of friendship, and the hope that one day love would triumph over hate. Meanwhile, at the Davis household, chaos unfolded. Mrs. Davis sat on the edge of Ethan's bed, her face pale and guilt-ridden. The weight of her actions crashed down on her like a tidal wave, drowning her in shame. She had reacted out of fear and prejudice, allowing her assumptions to cloud her judgment. "What have I done?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan paced the room, his heart racing with anger. "You didn't just accuse him, Mom. You destroyed his trust in you, in people. You can't just brush it off like it's nothing." I know," Mrs. Davis replied, tears streaming down her face. I let my fears take control. I didn't mean to hurt anyone." "Your fear led you to make a terrible mistake," Ethan shot back, frustration spilling over. "You need to fix this. You need to apologize to Jonas." Mrs. Davis looked up at her son, desperation in her eyes. "How can I? What if he never forgives me?" "You have to try," Ethan insisted. "You owe him that much. He's my friend, and he deserves better than what you gave him tonight." With renewed determination, Mrs. Davis stood up, wiping her tears away. "You're right, Ethan. I need to make this right, but I can't do it alone." Ethan nodded, the fire in his heart igniting again. "We'll go together. He needs to see that you're sincere, that you understand how wrong you were." The two of them hurried to get ready, the urgency of the situation propelling them forward. As they stepped into the cool night air, Mrs. Davis's heart raced with anxiety. What if Jonas didn't want to see her? What if he didn't believe her apology? But there was no turning back now. She had to confront the consequences of her actions, to seek forgiveness for the hurt she had caused. As they drove through the quiet streets of Richmond, Mrs. Davis couldn't shake the feeling of dread that settled in her stomach. Would Jonas understand that she was more than her prejudices? That she was trying to be a better person? The shadows of the past loomed large, but she was determined to face them head-on. "Just remember," Ethan said, breaking the silence. "You can't fix it with words alone. You need to show him you mean it." Mrs. Davis nodded, her heart pounding as they pulled up to Jonas's modest home. She felt small in front of the familiar building, a stark contrast to her own. As they climbed out of the car, she could feel the weight of her decisions pressing down on her. "Let's go," Ethan said, his voice steady as he walked towards the front door. With each step, Mrs. Davis could feel the walls closing in, but there was no turning back. This was her chance to confront her own biases, to mend a broken bridge before it crumbled entirely. They rang the doorbell, and as they waited, Mrs. Davis felt a whirlwind of emotions crash over her: fear, regret, and a flicker of hope that perhaps she could make amends. When the door finally opened and Jonas stood there, a mix of confusion and guardedness on his face, Mrs. Davis felt her heart stop. "Jonas," she breathed, ready to face the consequences of her actions. "Mrs. Davis," Jonas replied, his voice cool, revealing little of what he felt inside. She took a deep breath, preparing to apologize, to beg for forgiveness. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky but sincere. Ethan stood beside her, ready to support his mother, but this moment was hers. It was time to confront the damage she had done and show Jonas that she was willing to change. "Please, just give me a moment," she pleaded, feeling the weight of judgment in Jonas's eyes. The moment hung in the air, filled with uncertainty and the unspoken hope for healing. Confronting the past, Jonas stood at the threshold of his home, the cool night air wrapping around him like a shroud. The sight of Mrs. Davis and Ethan on his doorstep was jarring. He had expected to spend the evening lost in music, channeling the pain of his experience into the notes of his trumpet. Instead, here they were, the very people who had cast shadows over his spirit just hours ago. He took a moment to collect himself, breathing in deeply as he weighed his options. Part of him wanted to slam the door and retreat back into the safety of his room, to hide from the world and the pain that came with it. But another part of him, the part that believed in the possibility of change and redemption, urged him to stay and listen. "Mrs. Davis, Ethan," Jonas said, his voice steady but cool, masking the turmoil inside him. "What do you want?" Mrs. Davis took a step forward, her expression fraught with guilt and urgency. "Jonas, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean what I said earlier. I was wrong to accuse you of stealing. I let my fears cloud my judgment, and I hurt you." Jonas held her gaze, searching for sincerity in her eyes. "You accused me of being a thief," he replied, his voice laced with hurt. "How can you just say sorry and expect me to forget?" Ethan looked between them, his heart aching for both his friend and his mother. He could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. "Jonas, please," he pleaded, stepping forward. "My mom is really trying to make things right. She made a mistake, and she wants to own up to it." Jonas shook his head, his emotions swirling like a tempest. "It's not just a mistake, Ethan. It's a judgment based on nothing but prejudice. Do you know how that feels?" Mrs. Davis took a deep breath, trying to summon the right words. "I know I can't erase what I said, but I want to show you that I understand. I'm willing to learn and grow from this. It's not just about saying sorry. It's about changing." Jonas crossed his arms, still skeptical. "How do I know you mean it?" "I want to listen to your story," Mrs. Davis replied, her voice cracking slightly. "I want to hear your experiences, your feelings. I want to understand what it's like to be in your shoes, to face that kind of prejudice. It's not enough to just apologize. I want to change how I think and act." Ethan chimed in. "Jonas, give her a chance. I know my mom can be stubborn, but she's also willing to admit when she's wrong. You deserve that." Jonas felt the weight of their words, the sincerity in Ethan's plea softening the hard edges of his anger. He remembered the moments they had shared, the music that had flowed between them like a bond. "I don't know," he said slowly, his heart conflicted. "It's not easy to forgive someone who made such a harsh accusation. You have no idea what that does to someone." "I don't," Mrs. Davis admitted, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But I want to understand. If you'll let me, I'd like to sit down and talk. No judgment, just an honest conversation." Jonas hesitated, his mind racing. He felt exposed and vulnerable, like a raw nerve laid bare, but he also sensed an opportunity to bridge a divide that could foster understanding rather than hatred. "Fine," he said reluctantly. "But I want it to be clear that I'm not here to make you feel better. I want you to understand what you've done." "Thank you, Jonas," Mrs. Davis breathed, relief washing over her. "I appreciate this more than you know." Ethan gave Jonas a hopeful smile, his eyes brightening as he stepped aside to allow them to enter. "Come on in," he said, a note of excitement creeping into his voice. "Let's talk." As they moved into the living room, Jonas felt a strange mix of anticipation and anxiety swirling within him. He sat down on the couch, while Ethan perched on the armrest, both of them observing Mrs. Davis as she took a seat across from them, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Do you want to start?" Ethan asked, sensing the weight of the moment. Jonas glanced at Mrs. Davis, her face pale but resolute. "You wanted to listen," he said, his voice steadying. "So why don't you tell me what you thought when I walked into your house?" Mrs. Davis took a deep breath, her mind racing as she reflected on her initial reaction. "Honestly, I didn't see you as a person at first. I saw the color of your skin, and I let that guide my thinking. I thought about the stereotypes I'd heard, the fears I had." Jonas interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "But that's exactly the problem. You didn't know me. You made assumptions based on what you thought you knew." "I know," Mrs. Davis said, her voice trembling. "I'm ashamed of that. I'd spent so long unconsciously holding on to those biases, but hearing your story I realize how wrong I was." "Have you ever been judged like that?" Jonas challenged, his eyes narrowing as he studied her expression. "Have you ever had someone look at you and decide who you are before they even know your name?" Mrs. Davis shook her head, a tear slipping down her cheek. "No, I haven't. And I can't even begin to imagine how painful that must be. I want to understand. I really do." Ethan watched the exchange with a mixture of pride and concern for both his friend and his mother. "Mom, this is important," he urged. "You need to hear him. This isn't just about you feeling bad. It's about acknowledging the pain you've caused." Jonas felt a flicker of appreciation for Ethan's support. "I've grown up with people looking at me differently, treating me differently. It's like I'm always under a microscope, and no matter what I do, I can't shake that feeling. The weight of those judgments follows me everywhere." Mrs. Davis nodded, her expression serious. "What can I do to help change that? How can I make sure this doesn't happen again, not just to you but to others as well?" Jonas felt a surge of hope and frustration all at once. "It's not just about you apologizing to me. It's about you recognizing that your biases are part of a bigger problem. You need to confront those biases, not just with me but within yourself and your circle of friends. It's about spreading awareness, being a voice for those who don't have one." "That's a powerful point," Mrs. Davis acknowledged, her eyes brightening with understanding. "I want to be an ally, but I don't know where to start." "You have to listen more," Jonas suggested, his voice firm but encouraging. "Listen to the stories of people who have faced what I face every day. Engage with communities, support initiatives that promote equality. It starts with understanding and compassion." Ethan chimed in. "And you need to talk to other people about it. You have a platform, as a parent and as a member of the community. You can influence others to think differently." "I promise you both," Mrs. Davis said, her voice filled with determination. "I will make this my mission. I will educate myself, and I'll do everything I can to change the narrative. I don't want to be that person anymore." Jonas studied her expression, the sincerity evident in her eyes. He sensed a shift, a genuine desire for change that gave him hope. "That's all I can ask for. But it will take time. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight, and I'm not going to forget what happened." "I understand," Mrs. Davis replied softly, the tears continuing to fall. "But I'm committed to showing you that I can be better." Ethan placed a reassuring hand on Jonas's shoulder, grateful for the conversation unfolding before him. "This is a start, Jonas. It may be small, but it's a step in the right direction." With that, the atmosphere began to shift. The tension that had once filled the room began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of shared purpose and understanding. They talked late into the night, each word building bridges where walls had once stood. Jonas shared stories of his life, of his family, and his love for music, while Mrs. Davis opened up about her own experiences, her upbringing, and the misconceptions that had shaped her beliefs. As the hours passed, Jonas felt a sense of catharsis wash over him. It was an unfamiliar feeling, the warmth of forgiveness starting to unfurl within him, battling against the bitterness that had taken root after the incident. Maybe Mrs. Davis truly meant what she said. Maybe this was the beginning of a new chapter, not just for her, but for him too. When the conversation finally came to a close, the air was filled with a sense of hope and possibility. Jonas knew that there would be more hurdles to overcome, but he felt a glimmer of trust begin to form, a fragile bond that might, in time, grow stronger. As he stood to leave, Jonas looked at Mrs. Davis, sincerity in his eyes. "Thank you for listening, for trying to understand. It means more than you know." Mrs. Davis smiled through her tears, a smile that held the promise of change. "Thank you for giving me the chance, Jonas. I won't take it for granted." Ethan watched as Jonas walked towards the door, a new light in his eyes. The shadows of doubt began to lift, replaced by the belief that change was possible. Together, they had begun to dismantle the barriers that divided them, laying the foundation for a future where understanding and love would triumph over prejudice. As Jonas stepped outside, the night sky stretched above him, stars twinkling like beacons of hope. He felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He returned home with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to channel his experiences into his music, to create melodies that spoke of resilience, love, and the power of understanding. And somewhere, in the depths of Mrs. Davis's heart, a commitment had taken root, a commitment to change, to educate herself, and to stand against the prejudices that had once shaped her worldview. Together, they had started to forge a new path, one that promised to illuminate the darkness that had lingered too long in their lives. Unraveling truths. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow across the neighborhood, Jonas found himself immersed in the comforting world of music. He had retreated to his room, the walls adorned with posters of legendary jazz musicians and the soft hum of his favorite records playing in the background. The melodies enveloped him like a warm embrace, urging him to pour his feelings into his trumpet. Yet, as he played, the notes were tinged with complexity. The anger and hurt from the day clashed with the budding sense of hope ignited by his conversation with Mrs. Davis. Jonas felt as if he were standing on a precipice, torn between the shadows of prejudice and the light of understanding. The trumpet's vibrant sound echoed through his room, each note a reflection of his turmoil. He played a soulful riff, the kind that resonated deep within his chest. Jazz had always been his sanctuary, a space where he could express his emotions without fear of judgment. But now it felt like a double-edged sword, a beautiful outlet, yet a constant reminder of the challenges he faced. As the final note hung in the air, Jonas set his trumpet down, running a hand through his hair. He was exhausted, mentally and emotionally. The incident with Mrs. Davis had stirred up feelings he thought he had put behind him. Still, part of him couldn't shake the hope that this could be a turning point, not just for him, but for others who faced similar prejudices. In the days that followed, Jonas noticed a shift in his friendship with Ethan. The two boys spent more time together, delving into their music projects, sharing stories, and bonding over their favorite jazz tracks. It was as if their connection had strengthened, forged by the fire of adversity. Ethan, now more aware of the implications of his mother's actions, began to take an active role in discussions about race and inequality at school. "Hey, I've been thinking," Ethan said one afternoon as they practiced in his garage. "What if we started a music club at school? A place where everyone can come together to share their love for music, no matter their background." Jonas paused, intrigued. "That could be really cool. We could focus on different genres, bring in guest speakers, maybe even organize events." Ethan nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, we could have jam sessions, workshops, and even collaborate with the school's diversity club. It could be a platform to celebrate our differences through music." The idea ignited a spark within Jonas. He had always believed in the power of music to unite people, to break down barriers, and to heal wounds. "Let's do it," he said, a smile breaking across his face. "Let's make this happen." With renewed purpose, the boys set to work. They drafted a proposal for the music club, outlining their vision and goals. They planned to hold an informational meeting to gather interest and ideas from their classmates, hoping to foster a sense of community and understanding through the universal language of music. But as they prepared for their first meeting, Jonas couldn't shake the anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. What if their efforts were met with resistance? What if others didn't see the importance of their mission? He shared his concerns with Ethan one afternoon while they practiced. "What if people think we're just trying to be woke or something?" Jonas said, his brow furrowed. "What if they dismiss us before we even start?" Ethan shrugged, his expression unwavering. "We can't control how others react to Jonas, but we can control our message. If we approach this with sincerity and passion, I believe people will see the value in it. Besides, it's not just about us. It's about everyone who feels marginalized or misunderstood." Jonas nodded, appreciating Ethan's optimism. "You're right. We have to be brave and stand for what we believe in." As they put the finishing touches on their proposal, Jonas felt a swell of determination rising within him. This was more than just a school project. It was a chance to challenge perceptions, to open hearts and minds, and to create a safe space for everyone to express themselves through music. When the day of the meeting arrived, Jonas and Ethan stood in front of their classmates, a mix of excitement and nervousness coursing through them. The classroom buzzed with chatter as students filtered in, curiosity etched on their faces. Ethan took a deep breath, stepping forward to address the room. "Thanks for coming, everyone. We're excited to share our idea for a new music club where we can all come together to celebrate our love for music. We want it to be a space where everyone feels welcome, no matter who they are." Jonas joined him, heart racing as he spoke. Music is a powerful tool for connection and expression. We believe that by sharing our diverse backgrounds and experiences through music, we can create a community that values inclusivity and understanding. The room fell silent, and Jonas felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Would they understand? Would they care? But then a hand shot up from the back of the room. "Are you guys going to focus on jazz?" a girl with curly hair asked, her eyes bright with interest. Ethan grinned, his confidence bolstered. "Absolutely. We want to explore all genres. Jazz, hip-hop, rock, classical, whatever inspires you. We'll have sessions where we can learn about different styles and even invite guest musicians to share their experiences." The energy in the room began to shift as more hands went up, students eager to contribute their thoughts. Ideas flowed freely, and soon they were discussing everything from organizing concerts to collaborating with local artists. As the meeting progressed, Jonas could feel the excitement in the air, a tangible sense of possibility that fueled his determination. The discussion became lively, filled with laughter and passionate exchanges about music and culture. He could see the potential for something beautiful blossoming before him. After the meeting, As students filed out of the classroom, Jonas and Ethan exchanged wide-eyed glances. "That went better than I expected," Ethan exclaimed. His face lit up with enthusiasm. "We're going to do this." Jonas felt a surge of pride and relief. "Yeah, we are. This could really make a difference." But amid the joy of their success, Jonas's mind returned to Mrs. Davis. He wondered how she was processing the changes within herself. Had she followed through on her promise to educate herself about race and the experiences of others? He felt a flicker of concern, a desire to ensure that her journey of understanding continued. As if reading his thoughts, Ethan spoke up. "Do you think your mom would be willing to join us at the next meeting? It might help her see how we're building this community." Jonas hesitated, torn between the desire to include Mrs. Davis and the lingering resentment from their past encounter. "I don't know, man. I'm still trying to figure out where I stand with her." Ethan placed a hand on Jonas's shoulder, his expression sincere. "If you're willing to give her a chance, it could show her that you're not holding on to the past. It might help her understand more about how to be an ally." Jonas pondered Ethan's words, realizing that this could be an opportunity not just for Mrs. Davis, but for him as well. "Okay, let's invite her," he said finally. "But I want to make it clear that I won't tolerate any negativity. This is about building something positive." "Absolutely," Ethan agreed. "I'll talk to her. Just keep an open mind." With their next meeting set and excitement coursing through them, Jonas felt hopeful about the future. He had a vision for the music club that went beyond just notes and rhythms. It was about connection, healing, and understanding. He could see a world where music brought people together, breaking down barriers that had long divided them. As the days turned into weeks, the music club took shape. The camaraderie between Jonas and Ethan deepened as they navigated the challenges and triumphs of building their vision. Students from different backgrounds began to gather, each contributing their unique voices and perspectives to the group. They organized events, held jam sessions, and even collaborated with local musicians who came to share their stories and experiences. But amid the excitement, Jonas remained acutely aware of the work that still needed to be done. He felt a sense of responsibility to guide conversations about race and inclusion, ensuring that their club was a safe space for everyone. He took it upon himself to create a curriculum for discussions, introducing topics that addressed the challenges faced by marginalized communities, while emphasizing the power of unity through music. During one meeting, they delved into the history of jazz, exploring its roots in African American culture and its evolution over the decades. Jonas shared stories of the musicians who had paved the way, highlighting their struggles and triumphs. He could see the interest growing in his peers. Their curiosity piqued as they connected the dots between history, culture, and the music they loved. As the discussions unfolded, Jonas felt a sense of pride swelling within him. He was fostering an environment where people could learn, share, and grow together. It was a stark contrast to the dark moments he had faced earlier, and it fueled his passion to keep pushing forward. One day, after a particularly inspiring meeting, Jonas found himself sitting in the school courtyard with Ethan. They were both exhilarated, their minds buzzing with ideas for future events. "We should organize a community concert," Ethan suggested, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "We can invite families, local musicians, and even make it a fundraiser for a charity that supports underprivileged youth." Jonas nodded eagerly. "That's a fantastic idea. We could showcase different genres and bring in diverse acts. It would be a celebration of everything we've talked about in the club." As they brainstormed, a sudden thought struck Jonas. "Do you think we should invite Mrs. Davis to help? She has connections in the community, and her involvement could bridge some gaps." Ethan raised an eyebrow, surprised but thoughtful. "That could be a good move. It might show her that she can use her privilege for good, to advocate for change." Jonas bit his lip, considering the implications. It could also backfire. People might still hold on to their preconceived notions about her. "But that's part of the journey, isn't it?" Ethan countered. "If we want to break down walls, we have to be willing to confront our biases head-on." even if it's uncomfortable. After a moment of contemplation, Jonas nodded slowly. Okay, let's do it. But I'll talk to her first and gauge her willingness to help. I want to make sure she's on board with the club's mission. That evening, Jonas approached Mrs. Davis with the idea, carefully articulating their vision for the community concert. To his surprise, she responded with enthusiasm. I'd love to help, Jonas. I think it's a wonderful initiative, and I'd be honored to contribute in any way I can. As they discussed logistics, Jonas felt a sense of cautious optimism. Perhaps this was a sign of growth, a step toward healing. He reminded himself of the journey they had embarked upon together, the uncharted territory of understanding and acceptance. In the following weeks, preparations for the concert ramped up. The music club members worked tirelessly, coordinating with local artists, designing promotional materials, and rallying support from the community. Jonas felt a sense of purpose and belonging growing within him as they navigated the challenges together, proving that music could indeed unite. As the concert day approached, excitement rippled through the school. Flyers adorned the hallways, and students buzzed with anticipation. Jonas and Ethan's vision was becoming a reality, and they were determined to make it a memorable event that would resonate with everyone. On the day of the concert, the air was electric with energy. Families gathered on the school lawn, children danced, and laughter filled the air. Local musicians showcased their talents, and the sense of community was palpable. Jonas felt a swell of pride as he watched the diverse crowd come together, celebrating their shared love for music. But as the final act took the stage, Jonas noticed Mrs. Davis standing off to the side, observing the scene with a mixture of pride and uncertainty. He felt a pull to connect with her, to ensure she felt included in this newfound community. Mrs. Davis, Jonas called out, walking over with a smile. You did a great job organizing everything. This is amazing. Thank you, Jonas, she replied, her eyes brightening. I never imagined it would turn out like this. It's beautiful to see everyone coming together. Your involvement means a lot, he said sincerely. I appreciate you being here and supporting the club. Just then, Ethan joined them, his energy infectious. Mom, can you believe how many people showed up? This is incredible. Mrs. Davis glanced at her son, her expression shifting to one of gratitude. I'm so proud of you both. This wouldn't have happened without your passion and hard work. Jonas sensed the sincerity in her words, a promise that she would continue to stand alongside them in this journey. He felt hopeful, ready to embrace the possibility of change, not just for himself, but for those around him. As the concert came to a close, the last notes echoed in the air, leaving behind a resonant sense of unity. Jonas looked around at the smiling faces, the laughter that flowed freely, and the friendships that had blossomed. This was what he had envisioned, a community where differences were celebrated, and music became the bridge connecting them all. In that moment, Jonas understood that the journey toward understanding was ongoing. It would take time, effort, and the willingness to confront biases, but with each step they took, they were weaving a tapestry of hope, a promise that love and acceptance could triumph over prejudice. As the crowd began to disperse, Jonas felt a sense of accomplishment wash over him. They had created something beautiful, and he knew that their efforts had the potential to inspire change beyond their small town. In the heart of every note, every chord, and every shared smile, lay the truth that understanding and love could prevail, igniting a spark that would continue to shine brightly in the world around them. Seeds of change. As the concert's echoes faded and the last group of attendees trickled out, Jonas found himself lingering on the school lawn, awash in the remnants of the day's excitement. The atmosphere still buzzed with energy, vibrant laughter, and spirited conversations hanging in the air like sweet notes from a well-played melody. Ethan and Mrs. Davis were busy packing up equipment and chatting animatedly, their earlier apprehensions washed away by the joy of the day. Jonas felt a surge of gratitude for his friend and the unexpected support of Mrs. Davis, He had spent so long grappling with the weight of prejudice and resentment, but today had been a celebration of unity and hope. He glanced at the stage, where colorful lights still flickered, casting playful shadows. It felt surreal to have transformed an idea into reality, a dream into a movement. "Jonas," Ethan called, waving him over. "We need your help with the final breakdown. And then I want to hear your thoughts on how we can keep this momentum going." "Absolutely," Jonas replied, moving to join them. As they worked, a sense of camaraderie enveloped him. It was a stark contrast to the isolation he had often felt, particularly after his experiences with discrimination. He could see how their music club was blossoming into something more than just a group. It was becoming a beacon for change. As they finished packing up, Jonas turned to Ethan. "What do you think is next for us? We can't let this be a one-time event." Ethan nodded, a serious look crossing his face. "I've been thinking the same thing. We should plan a series of events, workshops, open mic nights, maybe even a collaborative album. It'll keep the spirit of the club alive and help us reach more people." "That sounds amazing," Jonas said, his enthusiasm returning. "We could bring in artists from different backgrounds to share their stories and experiences. It could really open people's eyes." Mrs. Davis, who had been listening intently, chimed in. "I'd love to help organize those events. I have connections with several local musicians and community leaders. We can really make a difference if we work together." Jonas felt a warmth at her offer. It was as if she was extending an olive branch, a willingness to engage and learn from her past mistakes. "That would be great. It's important for us to have diverse voices represented." As they packed the last of the equipment, the sky transitioned into twilight, the stars beginning to twinkle above them. The three of them stood together for a moment, gazing up at the night sky, their hearts full of possibility. "Let's meet next week to brainstorm more ideas," Ethan suggested. "We should get feedback from our club members too. I'll put together a list of potential local artists we can invite," Mrs. Davis added, her eyes bright with determination. This is just the beginning. The following week, the music club gathered in their usual space, a cozy corner of the school's music room. Jonas felt a sense of anticipation as he watched familiar faces fill the chairs. The energy in the room was palpable. There was a shared understanding that they were embarking on something meaningful together. "Welcome, everyone," Ethan began, his enthusiasm infectious. "Today we're going to discuss our next steps after the concert. We want to keep building on the momentum we've created." Jonas took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He had prepared some notes and ideas, wanting to ensure their discussions were productive. "I think it's crucial for us to not only celebrate music, but also educate ourselves about the cultural significance behind it. Each genre has a history that deserves to be explored." A girl named Maya, the budding singer-songwriter, raised her hand. "I love that idea. We could create themed workshops where we dive into different genres and their cultural contexts. It could be a fun way to learn while we play." "Exactly," Jonas said, encouraged by her suggestion. "We can bring in guest speakers or even musicians who specialize in those genres to share their insights and experiences. It's about creating a dialogue, not just a performance." Another club member, Aiden, added, "What if we organized an open mic night? It could be a space for everyone to showcase their talents, no matter their experience level. It'd be a great way to build confidence and encourage participation." Ethan beamed at the suggestions. "These are all fantastic ideas. Let's keep brainstorming. We can create a calendar of events and assign tasks to make sure we're all involved." As the meeting continued, Jonas felt a renewed sense of purpose swelling within him. Each idea shared, each voice raised, contributed to the collective dream they were nurturing. They were no longer just a music club. They were a community dedicated to fostering understanding and acceptance through the power of music. In the weeks that followed, the club blossomed with activity. They organized workshops focused on genres like jazz, hip-hop, folk, and classical, each session an exploration of the rich histories and cultural significance behind the music. Local artists joined them, sharing their stories and musical journeys, creating an environment of learning and connection. Jonas found himself in awe of the diversity of talent and stories that emerged. Each workshop opened his eyes wider to the beauty of different cultures, showing him that music was indeed a universal language, one that transcended barriers. He listened intently as an African-American jazz musician shared tales of struggle and triumph, the ways in which music became a refuge during the civil rights movement. One afternoon, Mrs. Davis joined the club for a workshop, and Jonas watched her attentively engage with the material, her eyes reflecting a desire to learn. After the session, she approached Jonas, her voice filled with sincerity. "Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. I realize now how much I have to learn. I want to do better, to understand more." Jonas nodded, appreciating her honesty. "It's a journey for all of us. I've had to confront my own biases too. But this club, it's a safe space for everyone to grow together." Their conversations deepened, and Jonas found himself increasingly willing to share his experiences, the pain of prejudice, and the struggles he had faced. It was liberating to articulate his thoughts in an environment that encouraged vulnerability. Mrs. Davis listened attentively, her expressions shifting as she began to grasp the weight of the issues he discussed. As the club prepared for their first open mic night, excitement coursed through the air. Students from various grades signed up to perform, each eager to share their creativity. The night of the event, the auditorium buzzed with energy, and Jonas felt his heart racing with anticipation. "Remember," Ethan said as they set up, "this is about celebrating each other's talents and stories. Let's create an atmosphere of support and encouragement." As the first performer took the stage, Jonas could feel the crowd's collective breath held in anticipation. Aiden, a shy sophomore, stepped into the spotlight, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched his guitar. But as he began to play, his voice transformed, filling the room with a heartfelt ballad about his experiences growing up in a divided community. The audience erupted into applause, and Jonas felt a wave of pride for Aiden. It was a moment of triumph, a testament to the courage it took to share one's truth. The night continued with a mix of spoken-word poetry, original songs, and collaborative performances, each act revealing a piece of the performers' identities. Jonas found himself moved by the stories shared, recognizing the strength it took to step into vulnerability and allow others to witness their journeys. When it was finally Jonas's turn to perform, he took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the microphone in his hand. He had decided to share an original piece, a tribute to the resilience of his community, a celebration of the friendships that have flourished within the club. As he played his trumpet, the notes flowed like a river, intertwining joy and sorrow, hope and struggle. The audience listened intently, their eyes fixed on him as he poured his heart into the music. When he finished, the room erupted into applause, and Jonas felt a rush of emotion. This was what he had dreamed of, a space where they could all be seen and heard. After the show, as the crowd dispersed, Jonas felt a sense of accomplishment and hope. They had created something beautiful, a community that not only embraced diversity but thrived on it. In the weeks that followed, the open mic night became a monthly tradition, fostering a sense of belonging among the students. The music club continued to grow, welcoming new members eager to participate and share their stories. Jonas felt a deep sense of connection with his peers, a recognition that they were all on this journey together, learning from one another and pushing for change. But amid the excitement, Jonas remained mindful of the broader implications of their work. He wanted to ensure their club extended its reach beyond the school walls, to impact the greater community. "Ethan," he said one day after a club meeting, "I've been thinking, we should reach out to the local community center and see if we can collaborate on events. We could host music workshops for kids in underserved areas, providing them with resources and mentorship." Ethan's eyes lit up. "That's a brilliant idea. We could even host a summer camp focusing on music and art, giving kids a space to express themselves and learn. Inspired by their vision, they began contacting local organizations, brainstorming ways to engage the wider community. With Mrs. Davis's support, they secured a partnership with the community center, organizing a summer music program designed to introduce young people to various musical styles and cultures. As the program unfolded, Jonas witnessed the power of music to heal and connect. He watched as children from different backgrounds gathered, sharing laughter and stories, their differences dissolving in the shared joy of creating together. One afternoon, Jonas facilitated a workshop with a group of eager kids, introducing them to the world of jazz. He felt a sense of fulfillment as they explored the history and rhythms, their eyes lighting up with curiosity. "Can we try making our own jazz piece?" a young girl named Mia asked, her enthusiasm contagious. "Absolutely," Jonas replied, grinning. "Let's create something together. Jazz is all about improvisation and having fun." As they experimented with sounds and rhythms, he felt the spirit of collaboration in the air, a reminder of the journey they had taken. Each note they played was a step toward bridging gaps, fostering understanding, and creating a legacy of acceptance. Through their ongoing efforts, Jonas began to realize that their work extended beyond just music. It was about creating a safe haven for vulnerability, dialogue, and growth. Their journey was far from over, but with each event, each shared story, they were cultivating seeds of change, transforming their small town into a tapestry of understanding woven together through love, empathy, and the universal language of music, harmony in diversity. As summer progressed, the community music program flourished, drawing in an eclectic group of children from various neighborhoods. Each session brought new faces, fresh ideas, and a vibrant energy that made Jonas's heart swell with pride. The once quiet community center was now a hub of creativity, filled with the sound of laughter and the unmistakable rhythm of instruments coming together. Jonas took on a mentor role, guiding the kids through musical concepts while encouraging them to express their individuality. He loved watching their confidence grow as they experimented with different genres, letting their unique backgrounds shine through their music. Each workshop became a celebration of diversity, where children shared their own cultural influences and stories. One afternoon, as Jonas set up for a session focused on hip-hop, he noticed a shy boy standing off to the side, watching the others with wide eyes. His name was Malik, and he had just moved to the area. Jonas approached him with a warm smile. "Hey there. Are you interested in joining us?" Malik hesitated, his hands fidgeting in his pockets. "I've never really played music before." "That's okay," Jonas reassured him. "We're all here to learn. Hip-hop is all about expression and creativity. You might surprise yourself with what you can create." Slowly, Malik's apprehension began to fade, and he joined the group. As they explored the foundations of hip-hop, creating beats and writing lyrics, Jonas made sure to create a safe space for everyone to contribute. Malik's face lit up when he finally shared his first verse, his voice trembling but filled with passion. "I wrote about what it's like to move to a new place," Malik said, glancing around the room, gauging the reactions of his peers. "It's hard being the new kid, you know." The kids nodded, empathy radiating from them. They all understood the feeling of being out of place, the fear of judgment that came with new experiences. Encouraged by their support, Malik continued to share more, and soon his words flowed with confidence. The workshop ended with an impromptu performance, each child contributing a line to create a collective piece. They cheered for Malik, who beamed with pride. As the weeks turned into months, Jonas and the club members planned a grand finale for the summer program. A community showcase. It would be a chance for the kids to present their work to their families and friends, demonstrating not only their newfound skills, but also the importance of their diverse backgrounds. Ethan and Mrs. Davis were instrumental in organizing the event. They transformed the community center into a vibrant stage, adorned with colorful decorations, string lights, and banners showcasing the children's artwork. The excitement in the air was palpable as the big day approached, and Jonas could feel a sense of purpose guiding him. On the evening of the showcase, the community center filled with families and friends, all eager to support the young musicians. As Jonas watched the audience trickle in, a wave of nervousness washed over him. This was not just a performance, it was a culmination of hard work, vulnerability, and the strength of community. "Are you ready?" Ethan asked, his voice steady but filled with anticipation. "Ready as I'll ever be," Jonas replied, determination lacing his words. The lights dimmed, and the audience settled in. As the first act took the stage, a group of kids performing a folk song they had composed together. The room erupted with applause. Jonas felt his heart swell with pride as he saw the joy on the children's faces. Each performance was unique, showcasing the diverse talents and backgrounds of the participants. Malik delivered a powerful spoken-word piece that spoke to the struggles of being a newcomer, his voice resonating with authenticity. The audience listened intently, captivated by his words and the raw emotion behind them. Jonas took a moment to reflect on the journey they had undertaken, from the initial concert to this very moment. Their music club had blossomed into a safe haven, a nurturing ground where children learn not only to play instruments but also to share their stories, to connect with one another through their experiences. As the night progressed, Jonas felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the community that had embraced this journey. Mrs. Davis, standing proudly in the front row, caught his eye and gave him an encouraging nod. She had grown significantly throughout this process, becoming an ally and advocate for inclusivity, her actions reflecting a genuine commitment to change. When it was Jonas's turn to perform, he stepped onto the stage with a mix of excitement and trepidation. He had decided to combine elements from various performances into a piece that embodied the spirit of their club, a celebration of diversity and unity. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice steady despite the fluttering in his stomach. "What we've created this summer goes beyond music. It's about understanding, acceptance, and the power of our stories. We all come from different backgrounds, but tonight, we're united through our love for music." The audience erupted into applause, encouraging him onward. Jonas began to play his trumpet, the notes flowing effortlessly as he transitioned between melodies that represented different genres: jazz, hip-hop, folk, and classical. With each note, he infused a piece of himself, a tribute to the incredible experiences they had shared. As he played, the other kids joined him on stage, adding their voices and instruments to the mix, creating a beautiful tapestry of sound. The energy in the room surged, the audience captivated by the harmony that unfolded before them. When the last note resonated and the final chord rang out, the crowd erupted into cheers and applause, the sound echoing through the community center. Jonas stood there, breathless, heart racing, overwhelmed by the moment. They had done it. They had created something beautiful, a shared experience that would leave a lasting impact. After the showcase, families mingled and celebrated, their faces reflecting pride and joy. As Jonas chatted with Malik, Ethan, and others, he felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. They had created a community rooted in understanding, acceptance, and the beauty of diversity. In the midst of the festivities, Mrs. Davis approached Jonas, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I just wanted to say thank you. You've opened my eyes to so much, and I'm incredibly proud of what you all have achieved." Jonas smiled, feeling a warmth in his heart. "It's been a team effort, Mrs. Davis. We couldn't have done it without your support and the community coming together." "That's true," she replied. "But you've been the driving force. Your passion and leadership have inspired so many." As the night drew to a close, Jonas took a moment to step outside, the cool breeze wrapping around him like a comforting embrace. He gazed up at the stars, reflecting on how far they had come and the lives they had touched. Each twinkling light felt like a reminder of the connections they had forged, the lessons they had learned, and the hearts they had opened. He realized that their journey didn't end here. They had planted seeds of change within their community, and it was up to them to continue nurturing those seeds, ensuring that the harmony they had created endured. Returning inside, Jonas felt a renewed sense of purpose. This is just the beginning, he thought. There's so much more we can do. In the months that followed, Jonas, Ethan, and the rest of the club continued to organize events, expanding their outreach to schools and community centers across the area. They created a mentorship program, pairing older students with younger ones, fostering relationships built on music and shared experiences. The impact of their work rippled through the community, inspiring other groups to create their own initiatives. Jonas and his friends became advocates for inclusivity, sharing their story at local events and encouraging others to embrace diversity in all its forms. Through their efforts, they not only transformed their community, but also changed the narrative surrounding music. It became a medium for healing, understanding, and growth. They proved that music had the power to unite, to bridge gaps, and to create lasting change. As the seasons changed and the community continued to evolve, Jonas knew that their journey was far from over. He felt a sense of responsibility to keep pushing for progress, to keep amplifying the voices of those who had been marginalized. On the night of their first anniversary celebration, the music club gathered to reflect on their achievements. The room was filled with laughter, stories, and an overwhelming sense of belonging. Jonas looked around at the faces of his friends, mentors, and the young musicians they had inspired. "Can you believe how far we've come?" he said, his voice filled with emotion. "We've created something incredible together." Ethan nodded, his eyes bright. "And it's only going to get better. We've built a foundation of trust and support, and we're just getting started." As the evening progressed, Jonas felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had created a legacy, a testament to the power of unity, understanding, and the enduring spirit of music. And with each passing day, he felt a renewed commitment to nurturing that legacy, ensuring that the harmony they had cultivated continued to resonate for generations to come. In the heart of their community, where once there had been division, there now thrived a symphony of voices, each one contributing to a beautiful, ever-evolving masterpiece. Jonas knew that together, they could face any challenge, and with the power of music as their guide, they would continue to transform their world into one filled with hope, acceptance, and endless possibilities.